The little girl stood at the edge of the crowded café, her crutches trembling slightly against the polished floor, her small fingers gripping them as if they were the only thing anchoring her to the world. Her eyes searched the room, not with the impatience of a child, but with a quiet, practiced resilience that spoke of years far beyond her age. When she finally reached the table where the tired-looking single father sat with his young son, she asked a question so simple, yet so heavy with meaning, it would change both their lives forever. "Can I sit with you?" Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles hidden in everyday moments, take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Heartfelt Stories. Your support keeps these stories alive. Armen Qureshi had not planned for that morning to be anything more than another survival test. The sun had risen too early. His son Zion had refused breakfast again, and the weight of unpaid bills sat heavily on his shoulders like an invisible storm cloud. The cafe was not a luxury for him. It was a refuge, a place where he could stretch one cup of tea into an hour apiece, while Zion scribbled on napkins and pretended life was normal. Armen's life had unraveled 3 years earlier, not in a dramatic crash, but in a slow, painful erosion. His wife had passed after a long illness, leaving behind silence where laughter used to live. Friends had faded, opportunities had slipped away, and he'd become a man defined by endurance rather than hope. Every day was about getting through, not getting ahead. Zion, only 6 years old, had grown up faster than he should have. His eyes carried questions he rarely asked, and his small hands clung to his father as if afraid the world might take him too. Armen did his best, but some days his best felt like barely enough. That morning, the cafe was unusually full. Business people with crisp clothes and hurried voices filled most of the seats. Armen had found a small corner table, tucked away but not entirely hidden. It was one of the few places where he could sit without feeling judged. And then she appeared. The girl moved slowly, carefully, her crutches making a soft, rhythmic sound against the floor. Her left leg ended just below the knee, replaced by a prosthetic that looked worn but well cared for. Her clothes were simple, neat, but not expensive. There was something about her presence that drew attention, not because of pity, but because of quiet strength she carried. When she reached their table, she paused, her eyes meeting Armen's for a brief moment. There was no hesitation, no fear, just a calm determination. Her question was gentle, almost casual, yet it carried a depth that Armen could not immediately understand. "Can I sit with you?" Armen blinked, caught off guard. In a world where people avoided inconvenience, where strangers rarely reached out, this small request felt unusual. He glanced at the empty seats around, then back at her. Something in her expression made it impossible to say no. He nodded. She sat down slowly, placing her crutches beside her chair with practiced ease. Zion looked at her with curiosity, his childlike innocence free from the awkwardness adults often carried. For a moment, the three of them sat in silence, the noise of the cafe fading into the background. What Armen didn't know was at this moment, this simple act of kindness was about to rewrite the story of his life. The girl introduced herself as Meher Sadiq, though she spoke little about herself. Instead, she asked questions about Zion, about school, about what he liked to draw. Her voice was soft, warm, and strangely comforting. Zion, who rarely opened up to strangers, began to talk, his shy smiles returning in small bursts. Armen watched, puzzled. There was something unusual about her, not just her confidence, but the way she listened. It was as if she saw beyond words, as if she understood things people didn't say. Over the next hour, something shifted. The heaviness that Armen carried seemed to lift slightly. It wasn't dramatic, not a sudden transformation, but a subtle easing, a reminder that kindness still existed. When Meher finally stood to leave, she smiled, a quiet, knowing smile, and thanked him for letting her sit. Armen nodded, still unsure why the encounter felt so significant. Days passed, but the memory stayed. Then, a week later, everything changed. Armen received a call from an unknown number. His first instinct was to ignore it. Calls often meant problems. But something made him answer. The voice on the other end was polite, professional, and completely unexpected. He was invited to an interview at a well-known company, one he had applied a month ago and long forgotten. Confused but hopeful, he went. The building was nothing like the places he usually visited. It was large, modern, filled with people who seemed confident and purposeful. Armen felt out of place, his worn clothes and tired eyes standing in contrast to the polished environment. He was led to a conference room and asked to wait. Minutes later, the door opened, and in walked Meher. But she was not the girl from the cafe. She was dressed in a tailored suit, her posture commanding, her presence undeniable. The crutches were still there, but they did not define her. Instead, she carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who had built something from nothing. Armen stared, disbelief flooding his mind. Meher Sadiq was not just a girl. She was the CEO of the company. The realization hit him like a wave. Everything, the cafe, the conversation, the questions, suddenly made sense. She had not been looking for a place to sit. She had been looking for something else entirely. Something real. The interview that followed was unlike any Armen had ever experienced. It was not about qualifications or rehearsed answers. It was about honesty, about resilience, about the ability to keep going when life made no sense. Meher listened, just as she had in the cafe, and then she made a decision. Armen was offered a position not out of pity, but out of belief. Months turned into a year. Armen's life began to rebuild, piece by piece. The job gave him stability, dignity, and a sense of purpose he had long forgotten. Zion returned to school with confidence, his laughter becoming a regular part of their home again. But more than that, Armen learned something deeper. Kindness was not small. It was powerful. It was life-changing. Meher's story, too, slowly unfolded. She had lost her leg in an accident as a child, had faced rejection, doubt, and countless obstacles. But instead of letting the world define her, she had built something extraordinary. And along the way, she had made it a mission to find people who still believed in humanity, even when life gave them reasons not to. That day in the cafe had not been random. It had been intentional. She had seen something in Armen, not his struggles, but his strength, and she had chosen to give him a chance. As time passed, Armen often thought about that moment, the simple question that had changed everything. It reminded him that sometimes the smallest acts carry the greatest impact. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of kindness or the importance of second chances, take a moment to like, comment, and share it with someone who might need a little hope today. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive. And before we reach the end, here's something special for you. Comment below. Have you ever experienced a moment where a stranger changed your life? Because sometimes the most important chapters begin with the simplest words. Can I sit with you? And sometimes saying yes is all it takes to change everything.